Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the April 12th, 2017 meeting of the Peace River, Manasota Regional Water Supply Authority Board of Directors meeting. If you're able, would you rise? Commissioner Langford's going to help us with the invocation, and then we'll do the pledge.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today with humbled hearts, and we just ask that you give this board the wisdom that it needs to make the decisions that will glorify you and take care of all the people that are on this water system, Lord. We just ask and pray that you'd send us some rain, Lord. We need some bad. It's dry. And we just ask that if it be your will, that you just send us the precious rain that we need to help replenish this earth, dear Heavenly Father. Lord, we lift up our country and we lift up the world to you with all the things going on. We pray that you just keep your hand on those that protect us and protect our rights, dear Heavenly Father, and that you would do the same for them. We lift our war leaders up to you and the leaders over this country, Lord, and we just pray that you give them the wisdom and knowledge and that they seek your wisdom and knowledge to make decisions that will glorify the kingdom of your kingdom and would keep us all healthy and safe, Lord. And we just pray all these things now in the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In a minute, we're going to go down below to do some recognitions. But to start with, we have some folks with us today. Commissioner Ken Dougherty is here. We have Commissioner McDowell from the City of Northport. We have Hector Flores. There you are. And Jonathan Lewis, an Assistant County Administrator from Sarasota County. Why don't we also first start with our introductions from all the folks that are here, as we usually do. So maybe we start with you, Ken.
I'm Kevin Morris with the Peace River Water Supply.
Richard Anderson is the staff. Mike Acosta, City of Northport.
Debbie McDowell, City of Northport. Jennifer DeRocher, City of Northport.
John Shearer with Shearer Consulting.
I think we need a traffic light sometime.
I see that. Yes.
Sam Stone with the authority.
Shelley Whiteheart, Peace River Water Authority. Becky Burke, Peace River Regional Water Supply. Mandy Hines, DeSoto County Administrator.
I'm Tim Kern with ACOM.
Hi, Ford Ritz with the Water Authority. Adam Smart with the Water Authority. Derek Howard, House Engineering.
Eddie Doyle, DeSoto County Utilities. Mark Simpson, Manatee County.
Chris Sheriff with Sheriff Solutions.
Disposal with King Engineering.
Terry Holcomb with HDR.
Ken Doherty, Charlotte County.
Good morning, David Cash, Sarasota County Public Utilities. Jonathan Lewis, Sarasota County. Good morning, Scott Schwartz, Sarasota County Public Utilities.
Bob Wood, PhD.
Cheryl Cook, WKDW Radio.
Doug Conjure, PhD Engineering.
Marilyn Ford, Charlotte County.
Florida, Charlotte County.
Michelle Harmon, Charlotte County.
Gary Hubbard, Charlotte County.
And I think that's I think that's everyone. We're also, before we come down there, we're going to start with an introduction and a welcome from the County Administrator for DeSoto County. Would you like to do that now?
Good morning. I just wanted to welcome you. We're always happy to host our members and our partners with the authority in our chambers. Wish we got to do it more often, not because I don't want to drive, but because we love to have you here. I just wanted to take a moment and tell you how much we appreciate the partnerships we have with our other local governments. And while we have a lot of different challenges, we have a lot of the same challenges and opportunities too. And we've had the opportunity to work with a number of your staffs and your member elected officials as well in a number of capacities, and we're really grateful for that relationship. Normally, I don't do a big introduction. I know the authority has important business, but I wanted to share just a couple of great things that are happening in DeSoto County. Things happen that are great all the time, but it's rare that we see the type of investment and the type of movement in big projects that we've seen in this last couple of years and that we have scheduled for the next couple of years. And I wanted to just share that excitement with you. Commissioner Constance and I were talking before the meeting about US 17, and I know that Commissioner Langford for a number of years has made trips to Washington with us, has talked with the DOT, worked with private landowners, and we were told long ago that we wouldn't see this project happen until at least it might start in 2025, and here it'll be complete this summer. So we're really excited about that. This last phase is a $33 million investment. We also, our board had the foresight to extend our water and sewer services along this last segment. So there are the guys in the hole. That's part of the new 17 that's going into place. We view US 17 as a great economic spine and also a great hurricane evacuation route for Charlotte County and a number of other counties along the way. I just wanted to share that with you if you got the chance. I never thought I'd be excited about being stuck in traffic or construction zones, but instead of being annoyed, I'm happy to see them because in government you understand that construction activity is exciting. It's not just an inconvenience. Sorry, I don't have the forward. We have a number of road projects like we always do, but in these couple of years we have, in that 5-year program, we have about $24 million of local projects funded, and that's not normal for DeSoto. So in the next 2 years, we have about $10 million of funding on major roads, and we're really excited about that. And I credit our staff and our engineering staff for really changing the level of funding that we've gotten for important projects to our area. Like Manatee, we share, being the home to a solar facility. This is a picture of the sun tracking panels, the first phase that was done in 2009. The president came, it was a great big deal, and at the time it was the largest solar PV array in the country, and that's quickly changed, of course. So with the projects going on in Manatee and also in Charlotte County, we also have a second and third phase that have been completed this year. If you would forward one more. This is an overlay of the property that FP&L owns, and in the top corner is, of course, the original 2009 facility. This FPL Citrus Solar is a 74.5 megawatt facility, much like the Babcock Ranch and the Manatee County piece. And then Wildflower would be the top piece. That's just an overlay of the footprint of where that would be. So you've got two 74.5 megawatt facilities and a 25, and that's really exciting to us. It's a huge capital investment. I'll feel a lot better when the legislative session is over and tell you if I'm still as excited about it today as we are come May. And then I think I just have a couple more. We've made some significant improvements to some of our boat ramps and facilities. This is our Lettuce Lake. Put in floating docks and redid everything, and then this last year paved all of the parking. So it's just exciting to see amenities that just existed really get increased to benefit the public. And we have a lot of traffic on the river, and I frequent the river as well. I enjoy the river, but on Sundays, I promise you, you will see a lot of your constituents up and down this river as well, especially Sarasota, Lee County. I'm not too sure about Manatee, but it's become a pretty popular boating hangout here in DeSoto. And the last thing I think I wanted to share with you is just that we, after about a decade of struggling with our public safety temporary living situation, we have been able to finally move forward and put these guys in a station that they're deserving of having good pieces in. This has been a partnership with the city of Arcadia. We had some legislative support to get this done. So it's one less thing that the commissioners have to pull off that list of we got to do it, and how are we going to do it? I think that was, and then this is truly the last one. Another exciting thing is the construction of the new rodeo facility. They've started to break ground on it. This rodeo is so well attended and so renowned, popular. It's a sellout event every year. The Rodeo Association has been working on replacing this and having this as a vision since 2004. And this year we're seeing dirt turn, and this new covered facility is really a world-class equine facility and rodeo facility, is now under construction and is being built. That's the dirt moving and all the good old engineering stuff with all the weirs and the drainage and things going in. So we're really excited about the magnitude of the investment over the last couple of years. Things that have been in plans for a decade are now coming to life, and we just wanted to share some of that excitement with you. And thank you for being here today, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to present.
Well, thank you. That's a lot of exciting things. Now, if the board would join me.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm sorry.
I just want to thank, thank you, sir. I want to thank Mandy for that great overview, and I do appreciate that. And I know we're the Water Authority and not the MPO, but I really credit FDOT, District 1, FDOT for the state and the governor, because what's happening with 17 has a lot to do with commerce, economic development, the proper pipeline. It doesn't go unnoticed that north of here, they're also finishing out the other segment, so it'll be 4 lanes pretty much all the way up to Winter Haven and beyond. I mean, it's really incredible, and I'm glad you guys are benefiting from it, so thank you for that.
Yes, Commissioner Bennett.
Yeah, and absolutely, we feel your excitement when we see these list of projects that we've been trying to get done. It's the same in Manatee County, and I couldn't agree more that FDOT is being a great partner. So thank you for sharing that with us. I definitely feel your excitement when you see these projects that you've had in the plans for a long time finally coming to fruition. It's kind of what we all live for up here, so thanks.
Well, that was very well done. And I was sitting here desperately trying to come up with a way that Sarasota County could get credit for 17, and I just failed miserably on that. Well, why don't we all go down below, because we've got a group of recognition and service awards and video awards to give out. Okay, I'm going to do the first part of it. I think you can all hear me. It's a recognition to Commissioner Chris Constance for his service as chairman last year of this board. And I want to say on a personal note, Commissioner, that he was a great mentor to me. I watched his every move so I wouldn't flub too frequently if it became my turn. And he also was a great help to me at the Florida Association of Counties. He was instrumental in helping with me getting a committee appointment, and he's been a great friend and a great mentor. Congratulations.
It's been a real pleasure and an honor to work with the authority over the last 4 years. My year's chairmanship went really well. We've seen tremendous improvements, as most of you in the audience are here every time we meet every 2 months, and you know that our facilities are top notch. We're going to be talking about some of our trials and tribulations with this lack of rain, as was discussed earlier, but we'll get there. And I think that great planning over a decade ago to get the reservoir up and running and to supercharge the ASR and all the things that, that's just good planning, that's good staff analysis, that's great board participation to make sure that all the members are involved in doing the right thing to make sure that we've got plenty of water in the bank. So, I think normally we'd be pretty worried right now if we didn't have all those assets, but I think we're just going to wait for the rainfall in another month or two. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Actually, I recruited more help.
Okay.
So, Sam, are you? We'll do the employee recognitions. Yes, I should introduce those that may not know. Sam Stone, who is notoriously known as, he is the original Peace River Authority employee, #1. He was the first employee of the authority, and I'm glad to say we still have him, but he's going to do the first presentation.
Thank you, Pat. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I'm a little rusty, so I'm that traffic light. I still need that traffic light just a little bit. But anyway, I'm filling in for Mike Coast today, and we wanted to talk about Shalina Odegaard. Shalina is an environmental specialist with us, and her background is marine science, biology, and chemistry, which is some of the things I'm very fond of. Shalina is working at a water resources office at the Peace River facility. She's worked for the authority a little over 5 years now. She came to us by way of one of our local labs that was doing our water quality sampling and analysis for us, and we're really fortunate that we were able to steal her from them, and we appreciate that opportunity. Shalina performs day-to-day care and manages the maintenance for the off-stream reservoir system. So she is a key person on that system, including all the electronic monitoring system on Reservoir 2, managing the care of the embankments, the perimeter roadway stormwater system, and then a real heavy issue is preparing the monthly DEP compliance reports. Those reports are horrible. And I hate to say that, but it's the truth. But anyway, she makes it go well and is able to really churn them out and do a high quality product. Shalina's been an exemplary employee. With her background in biology and chemistry, it's interesting to me to have a person that's got this science background to be able to save this agency tens of thousands of dollars over the years. And the way she's done that is whenever the electronic monitoring system in the reservoir would fail or have a failure, we used to have outside consultants, contractors that would come in and do those repairs. Those repairs would take a full day to do, troubleshooting, trying to figure it out. Shalina can get it done in about 30 to 45 minutes, and we no longer need those services. So I think that's kind of unique, having that science, biology background, but also got some electrical background too, that maybe from her dad. But anyway, Shalina currently lives in Port Charlotte. She enjoys fishing, cooking, baking, and we are very, very fortunate to have her. And that's all I have today. Somebody's going to want to take your picture. I'm sorry?
And a familiar face. We'll have Mr. Anderson will do the next presentation.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to do the 10-year awards. I've got two employees that are I have not run off yet. They've been here 10 years. That's a good thing. First up, let's do ladies first. I'd like to ask Linda Burke to come up. You have your speech prepared, Linda? Linda just completed this month her 10 years of service with the authority. She came to us during the REP construction, so she was initially a construction secretary working over at the ranch house in the same area that Sam's in. She's currently our administrative secretary, which means she does everything that needs to be done at the plant. She knows where every paperclip is. She knows where the chairs are stashed. Whatever you need, Linda has the answer to it. So she's responsible for doing purchase orders, setting up for meetings. She keeps the meeting calendar for the room. Basically the go-to person at the plant that everybody relies on. She's a native of Connecticut. She's moved to Port Charlotte in 1990, so she's almost a native, 27-year resident. So I think 30 years makes you an actual native, so a couple more years and you'll be there. Linda is very active in her church. She especially enjoys doing community outreach and working with the youth group, which she has admitted that's a little challenging these days with the way the youth are. So she has her hands full with the youth group. Linda has one son who lives on the other left coast out in Seattle, Washington. Has 2 grandkids. She's very proud of both of them, and she's more than happy to talk about them at any time if you just ask her. Her granddaughter Kayla is a stealth bomber mechanic in the U.S. Air Force. She's stationed at Eglin Air Force Base, which means, if you know anything about that, that means that her granddaughter's name is on the side of that jet, and she's responsible for the maintenance of that particular piece of equipment. So very, very proud of that fact. She also has a grandson, Justin, who recently relocated to this area and is actually her roommate. So keep us posted on how that's working out, if you would, please. Linda, I just want to say thank you for everything you do for the authority. You're very much appreciated, and look forward to another 10 years. So thank you. Here you go. Congratulations.
All right, 3, 2, 1. That's great, thank you.
Okay, up next we have Adam Smart. Adam, if you come up, please. Adam started with the authority in June of 2007, so he actually had to sign a waiver that says he will stick around for 2 more months to get his 10-year award. So he did agree to do that, though. So Adam started out, as I said, in June of 2007 as an operator trainee, and he's quietly grown into one of our senior, most experienced operators over the last 10 years. He's someone that you can count on every day. He's a reliable operator. He certainly knows the plant, certainly knows his business, and it helps folks like myself sleep good at night knowing that Adam is there when I'm not. So he actually just got off work. He was on the midnight shift, so he's a real trooper being here this morning, and I appreciate that, Adam. Adam's originally from Wisconsin. He moved to Florida in 1990, and he's been in the Charlotte area since 2001. Actually lives in the Deep Creek area. Is married to his wife Maggie of 13 years, has a son Jack, and a daughter Blakely. And he enjoys spending time with them. He's actually a baseball coach, enjoys fishing, and he's on his way to coach baseball after this. So you are a real trooper. So again, Adam, as I said with Linda, you're much appreciated. Thank you for all you do with the authority, and look forward to another great 10 or 15 more years of service. Thank you.
If you would,
Come on out, Adam.
all right, everybody smile. 3, 2, 1. Got anybody surprised, but I think it looks good. Thank you.
And while we have your attention, we do have 3 awards here on the board. There's actually 5, but we only brought 3 of them, and they're all on our video that was that Honey Rand made for us last year in conjunction with our silver anniversary. So we're very proud of the work she did, and I encourage everybody to go to regionalwater.org, and you will find our history video, which dates back to even interviews with Pat Glass and prior. So there's really something to be proud of, and certainly we're proud of awards. And certainly, speaking of awards, that I always like it when we keep the best tasting water in the family, and I'm proud to say that Recently, last week, Charlotte County Utilities won best tasting water in the region. They finally beat out Sarasota. I won't say where any of them get their water, but we'll let the imagination run. But it's certainly good that we all work together, and as a region, we accomplish good things. So congratulations to the board. So thank you all very much. That concludes the awards.
Okay, thanks to everyone. Stealth bomber mechanics makes me just feel like a real, that I've accomplished nothing.
Glad she's on our side.
Yes, it's a good thought. We're now on the tentative budget for fiscal year 2018. Mr. Lehman is going to help us with that.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. It's my pleasure to present to you the tentative budget for next fiscal year, FY 2018. It's amazing how time flies, but we'll give you the tentative budget. I think it's good news and continues our tradition of reliable and safe drinking water. There we go. Certainly you'll hear more today, our mission and vision, and we presented to all the boards before with our goals and objectives, and you'll be hearing more of that, and certainly the budget responds to those goals for the future. Today we're here to adopt the tentative budget. Over the summertime, there'll be plenty of time for review by your staffs, your boards, the public. Everything is posted on our website. There's a lot of materials in your board book. There's even more on the website as to how the backup materials. And we will have the final public hearing and board adoption of the final budget at your August board meeting. Certainly a number of documents that we build upon are interlocal agreements, contracts, and our bond issuances. Certainly our budget obligations, we must meet the obligations of water allocation 30.7 that are embedded in the master water supply contract, meet our customer demands, which are increasing every year, plan for the long-term water demands, certainly efficient and effective operations is certainly our goal, and investment in our infrastructure. You've invested in the infrastructure millions, millions, and millions of dollars. It's certainly incumbent on us to make sure that we do the proper repairs, maintenance, and R&R to maintain those well into the future. And certainly maintain reasonable water rates. I'm not going to say cheap water rates, reasonable water rates. And certainly not only for the next fiscal year, but looking ahead into the midterm, the next 3 to 5 years, and certainly long term, how are we going to finance future projects without rate shock to anybody? Certainly you all are familiar with this. In the paper the last couple of weeks, the extreme growth in this area. So it's not only just looking to today, but planning to the future to make sure that we meet those growth efforts into the future. We certainly have the costs that in the budget consistent with increase in water demands, which seems to be increasing 1.5% to 2% a year, which is consistent with your population growth. Looking at the staffing, we've budgeted a 4% increase, which I think is comparable to discussions with what our member governments are doing, but certainly we'll review that throughout the summer time frame. Health insurance increase, we piggyback on to Charlotte County. There's a 5% increase to health coverage embedded in the personnel part of the budget. And we're proposing one new staff person, which increases our full-time employees from 47 to 48. That person would be a project engineer, project management type position to make sure we accomplish our goals of construction and R&R upkeep of the current infrastructure. One of the things we've been hit with, and we're all being hit with, it's not just the authority alone, the FP&L electric rate increases that have been approved by the PSC of 10% and 3% make up for hurricane losses, so a total of 13% increase that they're giving us for, actually they're increasing them now as we speak. prioritizing R&R funding to maintain our infrastructure and make sure that we maintain your investment into the future of that infrastructure. I'm proud to say that we do have grant funds coming in for the next fiscal year, which has been a little down in the last year, but with our pipeline projects coming on, and we've been successful in getting SWIFT grant money and also state money, and we certainly want to continue doing that, which results in savings to your customers. Our budget is certainly an enterprise fund, just like your utilities. We don't use tax money. We do not have ad valorem tax. We are certainly ratepayer exclusive, pretty much. We have two functions: the administrative, which is located in Lakewood Ranch office, which administers the overall management of the authority. But certainly our biggest component is down at the facilities, with the facilities O&M, technical services, construction services. Looking at the overall budget and comparing to last fiscal year, you'll see there's an increase of approximately $5.5 million in the total budget. But don't let that be sticker shock, as you'll see in a minute. Most of that is comprised of CIP project expansions of the systems. You can see there how that breaks down between administrative offices and the facilities. So this is looking over the past 5 years. If you see the differentials in the budget, the green are CIP projects, and that's where the basic difference has been over the last few years, whether we have projects ongoing or not. And certainly you can see for the current fiscal year, as you heard, we're in the engineering phase of 2 major pipelines. Next year we'll be in the construction phase, and that's what that green pretty much represents. The orange area is our operations and maintenance, which has been very consistent. The blue are other rate-related, such as R&R, which you can see go up and down slightly, but have been very consistent over the last 5 years, even though demands have been increasing. The water allocations, this is established by the water supply contract. You can see Charlotte County, Sarasota are fairly much on an equal basis, with Northport approximately 10% of the water and DeSoto with a small section. Expenditures, certainly O&M, approximately about a third of the overall expenditures. You can see where debt service fits in. The biggest component, the other component to recognize is the orange, the projects. And that's where we really want to make sure that we emphasize. That's where a lot of our money is going, to the future, to meet those future demands and that growth. Where's the money come from? As I said before, we're an enterprise fund. Water sales is our primary component. CIP funds that we've collected, which also grant monies make up a large segment, which is a good thing. Funds brought forward, unexpended funds that we can make available to this year, and also reserve funds. Remember, a lot of those reserve funds are programmed funds. They're not just pulling them out because we need them. There are in our reserves that have been programmed over the years to collect them, to use them, to make sure we use them for R&R. We do have a little bit of rate stabilization included in this year to help offset the FP&L increase on the water costs, and you'll see that in just a couple minutes. How do we charge for our water? Pretty similar to the way you charge out to your retail customers, the end user. There's a base rate for the component that's set every month. That's based on the fixed O&M cost, debt service, those other components. And then the water use charge, which is billed out by actual water usage. All our connections are metered and billed out actual usage on a monthly basis by that component. Looking at how we establish the rate charge components, this is where it gets a little complicated. We tried to simplify it out, but we do have different rates on customers, pretty much based on the debt service component and the projects that each one participated in. So that we have at the water supply side, the 91 acquisition, the Peace River option, the regional expansion program, those debt service costs are allocated by contract by those that participated at what percentage. The same goes for pipelines. Those that participated by contract pay for those debt service costs. The fixed O&M costs are common rated accordance to your actual allocation according to that prior pie chart. So where are we looking at the base rate? It is increasing a little bit this year, but you can see over the 5-year run, the base rate from 2014 to 2018 has only gone up 1%. 1% increase over the past 5 years. We were able to do some financial debt service restructuring in 2015-16 that helped reduce those costs. But of course, the water demands have been going up approximately 2% a year. Your service area has actually been expanding quicker than the debt service. So actually, if you were to take a per customer cost to your retail customer, it's spread between a much bigger basis. So your per customer cost is actually lower. The water use charge, even though FP&L prices went up, I'm glad to say that we've done our prudence in chemical cost. We went out to bid, and you'll see that on the consent agenda today, that we were originally looking at increases in chemical costs. We've been able to keep that very much status quo. Some went up a little, some went down a little, but overall they're staying very status quo. So we're very comfortable, very proud to say that there will not be an increase in that water use charge. And of course, that water use charge to you translates to your end user residential business customers. So looking at the proposed budget, and you can see the differentials from the 2017 budget versus the proposed 2018 tentative budget, the individual increases by customer, and then the overall increase. The O&M costs, those costs are pretty much equated to the personnel costs. As I said before, wage increases, health insurance increases, one new position. That takes up about $300,000 of that. The rest are pretty much embedded in the repairs and maintenance program to make sure that our extended use of the facilities and the infrastructure is well taken care of.
Mr. Chairman, point of information,
Yes.
Are we taking questions as we go or at the end?
Well, we can interrupt Pat. I think
Sure,
that would be
I'm
better.
fine.
Just curious, knowing the proportion, when we're looking at the base rate, go back one slide. Is this based upon allocation or usage?
It's based upon allocation for as far as the fixed part of the O&M, but as far as the debt service, as I showed on a prior slide, the debt service on all the different components are
Okay.
also included.
Because I'm thinking, it looks, because when you look at the basic charge for 17, Charlotte County is almost 9 million to Sarasota 11.6. So you'd think that ours is a lower proportion. Then if everything went up proportionately, we would have a smaller increase than Sarasota has, but actually we have a bigger increase in Sarasota. And you're saying it works out because of the way it's broken down in that prior slide with all the components to it?
Correct. The debt service is inclusive in these numbers. So Sarasota had a bigger participation in the reservoir regional expansion. They've also done a couple pipelines, whereas actually you've actually prepaid on a couple things too. So your debt service is a lot less than Sarasota's and others.
Right. So then why would the increase for Charlotte County be higher than the one for Sarasota County?
Because on the fixed O&M, you have a tad more allocation in the contract.
Okay, so it's variable components
Correct.
within that very complex formula you talked about 3 minutes ago. All right. And then you sent, I didn't get it, so maybe, Jessica, you can resend it, but I think we discussed it at our meeting yesterday in Charlotte County. Some questions at pre-agenda were answered for Commissioner Doherty, but I can't seem to find it in my email. Can you resend that to everybody, or did you do that, Mr. Lehman?
Yeah, I've got
You don't have to,
I've got a couple slides at the end that I added on that
Okay.
may help.
okay, that'd be great. But I mean, after the meeting, just send everybody the end.
absolutely.
That'd be great. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Anyone else at this point? Okay. Go right ahead, Mr. Lehman.
Our other component through the management side of the authority is the member fees that have been in effect since day one of this authority, so that all 4 participants, not just those that get water from the facility. And by board policy, that cost is set up, half of that cost is spread equally, 25% to each member. The other half is pro rata according to your population. So certainly DeSoto with a population like this versus Sarasota with a population like that accounts for that big differential between the cost to each member.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
And again, this increase is reflective of the salary increases and the increase for healthcare that you mentioned earlier?
Correct. Well, most of that is
Okay.
primarily on that administrative wage side.
Thank you, sir.
And then our planning assessment, which what the authority does for their future planning efforts. Prime example being our strategic plan that we've been working on, and certainly you'll hear from Mr. Scheer later in this meeting too, that those are for the good planning efforts for the future of this whole authority. So those are the type of efforts that are included in these. And there again, pretty much by population base, so that's why there's the differential between the members themselves. Well, certainly in the budget process, we've been working with your staffs. We've gone through draft addition efforts with them, taken comments, revised to get to the tentative budget that we're at today. So today we'll be asking for approval of the tentative budget. We'll continue the review with your staffs, your administration, your boards, the public, and come back with the final budget proposed and hearing at your August board meeting. But certainly, we do have on our homepage the budget process. If you go to that, click it, you'll find not only what's in the board book, but backup materials that make up components of some of the major line items. And kind of fast forward, I know one of the questions was because the overall base rate goes up, it's gone up 1% in the last 5 years overall, but as we pointed out, not everybody's base rate is the same. There's different components that make it. So looking individually, put a couple other slides that's not in your board book, but certainly we'll add them on the website. You can see that the authority going up 1%, but how is that individually between all our different members? You can see there that Charlotte County, you've only gone up 0.6% over the last 5 years, even though your customer base has expanded, and I think you'll see in the presentation your water use is going up significantly too.
We talked about that.
So, looking at DeSoto, this is even better. You've actually gone down, and a lot of two of the main functions there is because during the rebuild you both bypassed on some of the new water that came with that, and Sarasota and DeSoto benefited. Northport benefited by requesting it, and with that request comes a little increase in the charge. So that Sarasota, you're actually up 1%, which is closer to what the overall authority budget was, and the city of Northport is actually up about 1.7%. But certainly that's over 5 years, so if you want to say 0.3% per year, it's still a good rate.
Can you, I'm just curious, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, absolutely.
The decrease from 14 to 15, what was the reason for that drop? What was going on that was favorable?
Those were when we restructured a lot of our.
That's right. That's right. Thank you.
So any questions, discussions, and ultimately staff would ask for a recommended motion.
Before we get to the motion, that would be for item number 2 under the tentative FY18 budget. Any other questions or comments before we do that? I would just add one. For the past several rounds now, 5 or 6, I've co-signed the checks with Mr. Lehman, and it's a showstopper. FP&L was always a big number, and now it's up to about $122,000 a month. So it's a big number. That 13%. We could sort of not take note on our home bills, but here, that increase of 10% was pretty dramatic. Anything else? Yes, Commissioner Bennett.
I just wanted to ask on the capital improvement side, as far as planning, is it a 5-year window? Are you looking at capital improvements out 5 years? And how do we project and fund those? It's a little bit easier when you have a single enterprise fund or an impact fee to be able to figure out what your capital improvement budget is. I'm just not sure I understand exactly how the funding for the capital improvement projects work.
basically, if you go to, within the budget page is a 5-year CIP, and certainly this budget only allocates the money for the next fiscal year, not future years. So what we have in there are projects, and they're in the current budget too, and some of them are carryover to next year. The 4D pipeline, Charlotte County, the 3C3, the Lorraine Road pipeline, that we put them further out, and we show that so that we can go to SWIFMUD, we can go to the state, we can ask for cooperative funding and funding because it's in the budget. If they weren't there, they'd say, you show nothing that does it. But you're right, and certainly within the strategic plan, goals and objectives, we want to work more toward a formalized 5-year, 20-year CIP program, and it's our intent to come back to the board in August when we actually have the final budget hearing as a separate document, much like you all do. Ours will be a lot smaller, with a 5-year, 20-year, some kind of a planning scope. And I know you work on connection fees and those type things and where you're going to get the revenue. Basically, the way we've operated as far as large projects, be it pipeline or water supply expansion, is to enter into a specific contract with whatever member or Northport that wants to participate, that obligates them to pay it, and they can either pay up front or we can do debt service on their behalf. So that's kind of the way it's worked, and you're absolutely right. We need to formalize it, and we understand that, and that's exactly what we're going to work toward, come back to you in August.
Okay. Commissioner Constance?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pat, excellent presentation, and I appreciate the time you've taken during pre-agendas to kind of go over these things, because there's a lot of minutia that we don't talk about during the meeting. So it's not, I know to the public it kind of looks like we get presented a budget, we say, sure, 49 million, no problem, let's move on, but there's a lot of work that goes on with staff, with us in our meetings, and we ask a lot of questions that we don't really want to bore the public with. The good news is it's all on the website for them to review, and actually we would look forward to customer input and ratepayer input over the next few months. If anybody has questions or wants to bring things up, they are free to call their member governments or call the Water Authority and discuss those items. Mr. Chairman, I'm glad you brought up the FPL thing, because we're going to talk about alternative energy. I think it's one of our last items, but I really think that this is a wake-up call, and if the power companies like FPL and Duke Energy are going flat out to put all these panels in, we need to start thinking about that too, and maybe not the full bore thing, but pieces. But I guess we're gonna discuss that.
Good thoughts. Commissioner Langford, I think you wanted to be recognized?
No, sir.
Okay.
I just was, when everybody gets done, if you're entertaining a motion, I would.
I think the time is now.
Okay. All right. Well, I'd like to make a motion to approve the tentative budget for fiscal year 2018 in the amount of $49,411,364.
Second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Langford, seconded by Commissioner Constance. Commissioner Langford, any additional comments?
No, sir.
Commissioner Constance?
No, sir.
Anyone else? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes 4-0.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to, I move to approve the resolution 2017-01, resolution setting forth preliminary schedule of rates, fees, and charges for FY 2018.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Constance, second by Commissioner Langford. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Chair votes aye. That motion passes 4-0. We are now on the consent agenda, items 1 through 8. The chair will entertain a motion for 1 through 7. We're momentarily pulling number 8 for just a little bit more discussion. So a motion on consent items 1 through 7, please.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Langford, seconded by Commissioner Constance. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries 4-0. Item number 8 under consent, Commissioner Constance.
Yes, sir. I appreciate this item being pulled. In discussing this in pre-agenda with Mr. Lehman, I just wanted to make sure that I was happy with the fact that the lease went from 5 to 3. The renewal will occur after year 2, so I wanted to make sure that we added that it also directs staff to bring it back to the board 2 months prior to that automatic renewal for basically the next 4 years to make sure that everybody's happy about what's gone on, if there's a need to restructure and those types of things. So if that's the pleasure of the board, I will move that we approve the authorized executive director to execute the 3-year lease with the renewal option, and also added language which you see in front of you to direct staff to bring back the board notice to renew or opt out of the renewal option no later than February of 2019.
Second.
Motion on that, on item number 8 of the consent agenda by Commissioner Constance, seconded by Commissioner Benak. Any further discussion? All those in favor, we're on item 8 of the consent agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Chair votes aye. That moves forward 4-1 in approval. We're on the regular agenda. Item number 1, water supply conditions.
4-0, sir.
What did I say?
4-1.
I'm new at this. Yes, 4-0.
There's only 4 of us.
And I'm
get to vote.
And I'm an accountant, and I messed up the math. How embarrassing.
Just want to keep the record straight.
I
again.
still think I'm at the county commission. Sorry.
Good morning again, Mr. Chair. For the
morning.
record, Richard Anderson, authority staff. Taking off my AV hat and putting on my presentation hat here for you. So, as usual, item 1 is the water supply conditions update. We're going to take a look at the water supply conditions at the Peace River facility through March 26th, and then the demand and usage for the month of February. As you've heard a couple of times this morning already, it is dry. The region is very dry. As you can see, we've had below average rainfall for basically the last 10 months. August of 16, we actually had average rainfall, but going back to June of 16, 9 out of the 10 months, we are below average for rainfall. So we could certainly use some rain, and we look forward to June getting here pretty quickly. As you can see, this is the river flows for the past 5 years. The green line, the repeating green line, is the historical average for the monthly. This is the monthly average each month for the last 5 years. The blue is the average actual flow in the river. You can see over here on the right side of the graph, we're below the red line, which is the line that allows us to draw water from the river. So we've actually had no withdrawals at all for the month of April, and actually the last half of March also no withdrawals allowed at all. This pattern looks very similar if you go back to November through March of 13. You can see the dramatic drop off here, followed by several months of no production. We're kind of in that same pattern this year. So this looks at the river withdrawals. Again, as you can see, very limited withdrawals. February we did have 10 MGD that we withdrew on an average basis, but in March we only had 2.5 million, which was the result of a shower we had mid-month. We got about 6 days of withdrawals from that event. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to, this is an important slide for me. What is the maximum we can take per day? Is it 120?
120 MGD,
Okay.
correct.
And so back in July, roughly, of 2012, we were up to at about 100. Were we using that water to increase the bubble in the ASR? Were we continuing to fill the reservoir? What was the history back then?
We were using that water to refill the large reservoir 2. As you can see, we were coming out of 3 or 4 months of no production whatsoever. Right. So, and when I get to the slide that shows the reservoir levels, you'll see back then it was down similar to what we're seeing this year. So we quickly ran the pumps pretty much, it'll do 120 a day, but with maintenance activities and things happening, 100 MGD averaging for the month is pretty much running the thing wide open.
Okay.
So we were refilling the reservoir and compensating for the drawdown from the spring.
So running wide open at about 100 million gallons a day and using, let's say, 40 a day for customers, your net ability to increase the deficit is about 60, what's your max, 60 million gallons a day when it's got a free flow on the river?
Yeah, a little bit more than that, probably 70. So it takes about 70 days maybe to fill it back up if we get into a drought, maybe 90 days, depending on whether we run ASR.
So 70 times 30, that's over 2 billion gallons in a month. We can refill a 2 billion gallon deficit in a month's time.
Correct.
If we have great rainfall.
Roughly,
great river.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just curious. Thank you.
And again, the ability to refill depends on how low we get, obviously. So, but again, we're in that pattern. It's just this is March 26th, and it resembles again about 4 years ago that same pattern. So, and here's our surface water storage as of March 26th. We just dropped below the 4 billion mark. Today we're right about here, right about 3.5 billion in our surface water storage. So we're using about, this represents about 1 billion gallons a month that we were taking out of the system. And like I said, as of 2 weeks ago we were here, now we're about 3.5 billion, which is a little over half full, obviously, in the reservoir system. ASR storage, great shape there, obviously. We have about, this represents about 6.55. Now we're about 6.4 billion in ASR. We're currently running that system at about 19 to 20 MGD, taking the rest out of the reservoir. So we're about 50-50 on the percentage between ASR and what we're taking out of the reservoir. So you should see, I'm afraid to try to back up here, but anyway, the slope of the line on the reservoir graph should start flattening out. Oh, thank you, Kevin. Okay. So next month, you should see this starting to flatten out a little bit where we're not using as much out of the system and taking more out of ASR. So overall, we're still in good shape. We have half of our volume in the large reservoir and full in ASR. So we're still in good shape. And there's ASR. And the final slide on this, this is just a graphic of the what I just mentioned. We're about 3.5 in the reservoir system, and we're still fairly full in the ASR system. This shows 10.44. Just talking before the board meeting, we're right at 9.99 as of Monday, so just under 10 billion gallons in storage. Now if we'll switch to the production side and the usage side. This is the February production data. I'm going to spend a couple minutes on this just to refresh the information here. The capacity here, 34.7, represents your allocations in the authority system. This represents your total allocation, not our production capacity or treatment capacity. That's what y'all have reserved from the authority facility. For February, we used 29.7 at the authority system. Then the county and city facilities, right at 70 MGD capacity. That's y'all's permitted capacities for all of y'all's combined facilities. Oh, Kevin, can you back me up one more time? Thank you. For February, combined, y'all used 44.3. Our total capacity as an organization and as y'all's entities combined is 105 MGD, and we used 74 million in February. Again, 3.5 of that went to non-authority customers supplied by Manatee County. So the total usage within the authority customers was 70.5 MGD for February. As I go through as county by county, the same situation. The Peace River facility allocation for Charlotte County, 16.1. For February, you used 12.2. Self-supplied about 500,000 from your facility at Burnt Store, which is permitted at 3.17. Your total available capacity, 19.3, and you used for February 12.75. So when I look down here at the bottom graph, which is the 12-month running average, the previous 12 months, which would be March 1st to March 1st, Charlotte County's broken through to the 11 MGD plus club, so they're 11.3 for the past 12 months. And again, you saw the rainfall, 10 months of dry weather. That's to be expected, I think. So you'll see several of these.
Yes, Commissioner.
And Mr. Chairman, I think it's important to underscore. So again, that is a record. We are now at the highest monthly use and the highest 12-month running average use of our history. Is that correct?
I can't confirm that right here. you're very close, if not at that number. I didn't look at it from that perspective, but 12.7 is a fairly high usage for you.
And that's February. We haven't even seen March yet.
Correct.
Right, okay, thank you.
Okay, DeSoto County, again, DeSoto's allocation at the facility, 0.68. February, y'all used 1.1 MGD, 0.75 from your DeSoto facilities. You used 0.3 for a total of 1.3 for the month of February. Long term, you're still very flat on your overall usage for the last 6-7 years. The last 12 months, your running average is right at 1 MGD. And Manatee County has a permitted capacity at the facility at the Lake Manatee plant of 52 MGD. February, you used 32.5 MGD within your service area, Manatee County customers only. Exported 4.2 to Sarasota, and then again 3.5 to Palmetto, Bradenton, and Longboat Key. So your total production at the plant was just over 40 million gallons a day. Long term, you are running roughly the same as your February number, 32.3 for the past 12 months running average. There we go. Sarasota County. So Sarasota's allocation in the authority system is 15.06. You used almost all of that. Good job. 11. I've got trigger finger here, I'm sorry. 14.8 used in February. You imported again 4.1 from Manatee County and self-supplied about 1.7 from your facilities within the county. Total usage was 20.65. Again, long term, for the last 12 months, about 19.4 MGD. And finally, City of Northport. Northport's allocation is 2.86. They purchased 1.66 from the authority. Their permitted capacity within the city, 3.3. They used about half of that, 1.5 MGD for the month of February. They exchanged a little bit of water. They took some water from Sarasota County in the month of February, about 111,000 a day. Total usage was 3.26. And again, long term, the city's at 3.02 over the last 12 months. And then regionally, this is where you see the nice jump here. Going back to 2015, 67. We jumped about 1.5 million in 2016. And again, the last 12 months, running average, we've jumped another 1.6 or so MGD in region-wide. For the month of February, our available capacity was 30.6. Again, we used system-wide, and this includes water that Manatee supplied to their consecutive customers, 74.04. And that utilization, is just under 71% for the region. Now, this is a slide I didn't have in my presentation last board meeting. I took it out because Mr. Coates was kind of covering this under another presentation. But this is the Swift Mud demand projections for the southern region. It's from their water supply plan 2015. And this shows the authority contribution to the region, the southern region, which is Charlotte, DeSoto, Manatee, and Sarasota, for 2015-16, about 68 MGD. Total usage within the four-county area is projected at 91 MGD. So we're about 70% of the total usage within the four-county area as an authority. This is another slide you've seen before. Who's actually using that water? This is for 2015. Again, authority members, about 2/3 of the water, about 68 MGD. Swift Mud puts Northport within the non-authority group, but they're on our side, so we'll let them be part of our blue pie here. But then the other cities, I'm sorry, Kevin, this is a touchy mouse. Other cities and counties represent about 23 MGD of usage for the non-authority utilities. And this slide is the final slide here. This is a new slide. The left-hand graph is similar to the first graph I showed that talks about our total production for the month. This is actually 2015 actual numbers. You can see Authority allocation, we produce 25.4. That's about 73% of our allocation. You, as a group, have 70 MGD. You produce 38 MGD. That's 54% utilization. When you add it all up, we're about 64% as the authority, including water that's supplied by Manatee County to their consecutive customers. When you back that number out, we used about 63.5, or about 61% for 2015. Now, the right side are non-authority systems, and I've listed them in order of size. We've got City of Sarasota, permitted capacity 12 MGD, and actual usage 6. As you can go down the line here, you can see there's some varying degrees of available capacity within those utilities. Sarasota, Punta Gorda, fairly fat with available capacity. Bradenton using 83% of their supply, plus another half an MGD that they're purchasing from Manatee County. So there's an opportunity there. Venice, Inglewood, all in fairly good shape. Gasparilla Island and City of Arcadia, both right about 70%. But when you look at the non-authority utilities, 42.6% of capacity, or of available capacity, or permitted capacity rather, using about 23.5, 55% utilization. So overall, as a region, we're in very good shape when you look at what we have in permitted supply versus actual usage. And with that, be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Just one. The last slide said 2015.
Yes.
So that's the latest data you've been able to collect from everybody.
This data was from the SwiftMud estimated usage report from 2015. That's the latest draft. They don't have the 2016 report out yet.
Okay.
Because it's a calendar year for them. So this is the latest data that I could get from SwiftMud on the actual numbers.
That should hopefully be available shortly if it's a calendar year, right?
I would assume it's going to be ready within the next month or two, I would think.
So maybe you'll show us 2016 next time around?
I can try, yes, sir.
Whenever it's available. Thank you. No, it's great. Thank you. That snapshot's exactly what I've been looking for. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We're at regular agenda, item number 2, strategic plan implementation process. Mr. Shearer, how are you?
Very good, Mr. Chairman. Hi, I'm John Shearer, with Shearer Consulting. I'm here to bring the strategic plan implementation process in for a landing. Just to review, and we started out this meeting, Commissioner Constance, when he accepted his little gavel for thank you for being the chair, mentioned the fact that how proud he was of the authority, and the good work that you do today was based on very good planning that was done in the past. And good planning is not a static endeavor. It's very dynamic. It needs to be updated constantly, and I think that was the essence of what the board did when they updated the strategic plan 2 years ago. The plan articulated a clear vision and mission, identified for the first time some new core values that they want to incorporate, those being cooperation, collaboration, regionalization, diversification, and water advocacy. And basically that speaks to the members working together amongst themselves and working with the other communities that have water to have in the future a very highly interconnected water system, which would speak to long-term efficient supply. We were ready to adopt this package back in February, but the board asked that we visit with each of the member commissions, which we did. The goals and objectives in the plan itself were presented to DeSoto County February 28th, Charlotte County March 14th, Sarasota March 22nd, and last week in Manatee April the 4th. From where I stood and talking to the different elected officials at those meetings, it was clear that it was, if not eye-opening to them, kind of enlightening as far as what the authority was. Just like good public works, if it's in the background, if it's efficient and effective, we hardly know about it. We take it for granted, and only when we have a crisis. But one of the issues that I thought was common to all of them that was, they expressed, the fact that we have over a year of reserve capacity. We have a very highly reliable system. I have to tell you, I've worked throughout the state and the United States in my career, and you are the envy of the rest of the state for what you have done. But again, that's not a static endeavor. That needs to be moved forward, and that's essentially what we have in this strategic plan. The initial strategic plan was very aspirational. The board wanted some more specifics, directed Pat, your county administrators, and everybody's professional staffs to work together to put together a series of actionable items that could implement the plan over the next several years. That is essentially what we're here today to review and approve, and so we can move forward. We did get one comment back on the actual items themselves. That's what we're here to discuss today. In Initiative 2, under the Financial Stability Objective 2-5, there was a term of art used called uniform rate. It didn't add anything to it. It created some confusion. It really wasn't appropriate. It wasn't necessary. Pat Lehman looked at it and said, we don't need it at all. We can just strike it out. So what we're here today is to adopt those goals and objectives with that one correction to strike the uniform rate.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I may, thank you.
Yes.
This is just part of this grammatical change, and I'm fine with, Charlotte County's fine with this. Is it meant to be analogous? In other words, it's CIP Reserve Fund for non-R&R CIP authority projects, that's the same entity? We're not putting the word "and" in there as two things.
No.
CIP authority projects refers to CIP Reserve Fund non-R&R projects.
Yes.
Just making sure. Okay, good.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Shearer?
No, it was a pleasure to do this and to meet with your commissions and to work with all the professional staffs. It was very good, and I think you guys should be commended for the vision that you've laid out for the authority.
Mr. Lehman, do we need a motion here now?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Commissioner Constant?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve strategic plan implementation goals and objectives as stated with the edit to remove uniform rate.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Constant, seconded by Commissioner Langford. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Chair votes aye, and he'll do his math correctly. Pat moves forward 4-0.
Very good.
Thank you. We're on item number 3, alternative energy investigation for the Peace River facility.
Morning, Mr. Chairman and your fellow board members. For the record, I'm Kevin Morris with the authority staff, and I have the honor of bringing regular item number 3 to you today, alternative energy investigation. Over the last month, I think Mr. Lehman sent to you a brief survey that one of our consultants, Black & Veatch, who has deep roots in the power industry, prepared for us. That looked at a survey of how photovoltaic solar power projects have grown in the last decade or so. And what I'm going to do today is to sort of summarize that for you, capture the essence of that presentation, and tell you where we stand today and where we might want to go from there. So at the Peace River facility, our facilities use power in a number of ways. We have fixed facility electrical consumption. We have, whether we make water or not, we have to turn the lights on. We have to run the computers. The air conditioners are running. Our control systems are running. It's a very small fraction, but it is does add up to a significant amount of the power use. But by far, the largest amount of energy that we consume is related to the variable energy, and this is based on how much water we pump up from the river. We pump through the water plant. We have to mix it. We generate sludge that has to run through the sludge presses. And so when you sit back and you look at how much power it costs, let's use an analogy, for example, of how much it costs to fill your tank. The two questions you have to ask is how big is the tank, and then what are you putting in it? In the case of the lawnmower, at the very top, it might cost $2 to fill it up. In the case of a big rig where you're filling with diesel, a couple hundred gallons might cost you $500. And so what I wanted to do, since pumping is such a large amount of our electrical consumption, let's talk about what it would cost to fill our reservoir. So our tank is 6 billion gallons, and we're filling it with water, which is free. We just got to get it up the hill. We just have to put the electricity to the pumps. And And hopefully, Richard, we never see the reservoir look like this again. This was in 2009, before we first began to fill it. So let's look at filling the reservoir. So you start from an empty state, and you're almost a billion gallons, 1.5 billion gallons, 2.5 billion gallons, 3.5 billion gallons, 5, and then 6. So the amount of energy it costs to fill that reservoir, in general terms, is about $150,000. And since we as the Water Supply Authority divert about 10 to 12 billion gallons a year off the river, we're filling that reservoir twice every year. So that's about $300,000, over $250,000 worth of energy costs just to take raw water from the river and move it up the hill. So that's an example, one of the big examples of where we consume energy at the Peace River facility. If you look at a pie chart of where energy is used in our operations, what you see is the larger slices of the pie are all related to pumping. The analogy that I just showed you was this red slice here. About 18% of our energy costs pumping the water up to the reservoir. High service pumping is about a third of all of our electrical costs. So over 80% of our electrical usage can be tied to pumping in one way, shape, or form. So there are certainly alternative energy sources that are out there, and one of the things that Black & Veatch did in their effort was they looked at some of the more common ones. Wind power, to be cost effective, you really need to have prevailing winds of a certain velocity, and here in Florida we just don't have that. Besides which, if you've ever looked at a video of looking down the access ladders inside one of those wind turbines, they flex. They actually will flex in the wind. And so, as you can imagine, the wind loadings we get from hurricanes would be extreme, put an extreme amount of stress on a wind turbine. And so, for us, wind energy is not something that is generally considered to be cost effective.
Commissioner Thomas.
Yes.
And I would agree with everything you say, except there are some, I think, some wind power projects southeast of Okeechobee. There's a zone there that they say has prevailing winds, and I was at an energy conference 3 or 4 years ago, and there was a company that was looking to install some facilities there. I don't know if that was done or not, but when we talked about the map of Florida, so obviously it's not close enough, but I don't know that that's totally true for Florida. For this area, I totally agree. Yeah.
Hydroelectric is another opportunity for us, and for hydroelectric to be cost effective, you have to have water dropping out of a higher lake into a smaller lake, or in the sense of our finished water, if you're discharging water constantly into a tank and you're bleeding that pressure off across a control valve, that's an opportunity lost. And so for us, hydroelectric is certainly something we probably should revisit every several years to see if there have been advantages and advances in the technology that might make it cost effective, but the jury is kind of out on that. The big opportunity for us, of course, is solar. Now, how much energy do we use? We use about 2.8 megawatts of electricity, of energy. That's our average usage, which is equivalent to 46,000 60-watt light bulbs or 2,500 homes. That's our average energy draw, and of course it flexes up and down from there. So that gives you a sense for how large of an alternative energy installation we would need to offset the amount of energy we pull from the grid. So one of the things that Black & Veatch looked at for us was where are there solar power projects in the state of Florida. And of course, as Ms. Hines pointed out, and as you see over on the wall, we have the commemorative plaque from the DeSoto solar energy field, one of the first to go in the state about almost 10 years ago now, and it's located just up the road about 10 minutes or so. But in the state of Florida, Black & Veatch identified 16 installations, and all but 2 of these are larger than a megawatt in size. The largest is about, I think it was 85 megawatts, so it gives you a sense for the range of sizes. So what kind of a project would it take to fill our energy need? Our 2.8 megawatt average energy demand, now keep in mind the sun doesn't shine at night. In the wintertime, the days are shorter than they are in the summer, and the amount of energy coming from the sun in the evening and in the morning is not as strong as it is during the peak of the day. And so if you want to build a facility that can supplant all of your energy needs, you need to build it large enough to capture the energy during those peak daylight hours and store it in a battery system. If we were to look at that sort of a project, our consultants tell us we'd need about 56 acres of land, and the capital cost would be roughly about $15 million in capital costs. They tell us that we could expect about $200,000 a year in O&M. And the payback analysis is a bit complex on this. We currently enjoy what is called a CILC, a commercial interruptible load control rate from Florida Power and Light. And that gives them the ability to, with a warning to Richard's guys, to shut the plant off if they're running into supply issues. And we have enough diesel backup generator capacity that we can supplant our energy needs until their emergency is over. So we enjoy a very, very favorable rate structure that saves us up to $500,000 a year currently. So we would need to understand how we might jeopardize or change that favorable rate structure if we did this sort of a project. Now, the solar panels should last us about 20 to 25 years. And so in the payback analysis, we also need to consider, are you including a sinking cost for replacing panels? If you did include that in there, you'd be looking at about $500,600,000 a year in annualized panel replacement costs. And then battery life cycle, and then the legacy cost or disposal cost of the batteries. Those are some of the factors that you would need to consider. Now, if we look at these facilities again that are on the map there, 94% of that 406 megawatts of total electrical generation capacity is being done in partnership or in cooperation with TECO, with Duke Energy, with OUC, with Florida Power and Light, with major electrical utilities. And there's three main reasons that the partners all chose to go with an electric utility, and they're all related to risk. The first is that power generation is not generally in an area of competency. You don't have the staff, you don't have the training, you don't have the expertise. The second is safety. These photovoltaic systems you're wheeling around thousands of amps. And so you need to safeguard your employees. You need to have people working on these systems that understand what they're doing and have that kind of capability. And the third one is from a device protection standpoint. If you put in a photovoltaic system to hopefully save you a couple hundred or maybe $1,000 worth of energy a day, that's wonderful. That's on the positive side of everything works. If it doesn't work for a millisecond, for 50 milliseconds, you can cause massive damage to devices, both on your side of the grid as well as problems with the grid as well. And so these are all reasons why people have chosen to partner with or collaborate with the electrical utilities. So just a brief survey of what's out there. In conclusion, I'd like to say certainly solar energy, alternative energy can help us defray our costs, and it is something that is something we should absolutely look at, especially in a climate of rising energy costs. As we talked about earlier, someone mentioned Florida Power and Light going up 13% on their rates, and clearly as the cost of power goes up, it makes alternative energy much more favorable. Alternative energy, like solar power, is consistent with environmental sustainability, so it's consistent with our mission. It's consistent with a number of the strategic initiatives in our strategic plan. And then also, finally, this industry is going through a period of rapid growth. There is a lot of research and development. There's a lot of innovation. The mass manufacturing is becoming more efficient, and so we're going to see prices for photovoltaics. Most of the experts believe those prices are going to continue to decline. And so if it's not cost effective now, it may very well be in a short time to come. And so Mr. Lehman has asked the staff to work with one of our consultants to develop a scope for a business case analysis, a small study to look at potentially a demonstration project or something where we would sit down with Florida Power and Light, understand these factors, how might this affect our rate, where in our operations is there an opportunity for a project like that, and we've developed that scope of work, but we're always interested clearly in what the board has to say if you have any guidance for us on where we go from here. But that's a summary of what we've done, what we know to date, and where we're headed with alternative energy.
Commissioner Benak, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I appreciate this analysis because it's one of the things that we hear frequently, and perhaps you do in your commission meetings about, why are we not looking at it? And you have to drill down into the factors to be able to have a good answer for folks. And I had the opportunity to work on that solar field and the solar field in Manatee County in my previous life as a consultant for a civil engineering firm. So I actually was at the opening of that project, and most recently the one in Manatee County. And one of the biggest things that I didn't hear mentioned is land. When you have a solar farm, it is a huge commitment of land, acreage-wise. So how was that calculated in this analysis?
We have one.
50-something acres, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But we have land, and actually a study was done, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
A study was done 8 years ago, or I don't know. I was privy to a prior study that had been done by the Water Authority kind of looking into this, and one of the great parts of that study is they did identify tracts of land around the reservoir which, wouldn't be environmentally sensitive, and were proximate. I mean, it's sort of been mapped out. That's the good news, is that we already have access to the land. It's just a question of, how you roll it out. So.
And these have also been in conjunction with existing power plants that were already there, at least one in Manatee County, and that brings another factor to it as to how you produce the powers that needs to be considered as well.
That's if I could, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
sir.
The consultants tell us it takes about 5 acres for every megawatt of generation capacity, and it's fascinating when you do drill down on at least this facility in DeSoto County, which has been there long enough that there are Google aerial images, Google Maps aerial images, Google Earth aerial images of this facility. You can zoom in and look at the grid and look at how they arranged and situated the panels, and it's not like a bookshelf where your books are side by side by side by side. You have to leave room between the rows, and I think we were measuring based on the crude ability from Google Earth, but 15 feet between rows longitudinally and 10 feet between rows laterally. You have to have the room for service equipment and manpower to get in there and actually maintain and replace panels as needed. So that's land is certainly a significant concern. And Mr. Constance said we do have permanent exclusive easements on the R.V. Griffin Reserve, and there are many areas that are not considered wetlands or environmentally sensitive areas that were cleared, for example, for the reservoir construction and remain cleared, and that we could tap into for such a project.
Any other, Commissioner Constance?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, he's.
Go ahead,
Go
Commissioner.
ahead.
Did you want
No, yeah, but go ahead if you.
Go ahead.
Well, I want to thank Kevin for the presentation, and I'm really looking forward to us doing something because I want to see some more of your videos. So, I think that we've been talking about this now for a few months, and it may well be that we're going to have to partner with FP&L. It seems like most people are partnering with their company that serves them currently, but there is a positivity to the situation. I mean, they're going to get a benefit out of the fact that if we do make the land available and we do put the panels in, I mean, that's our skin in the game, and we may see a freeze of our rates or a reduction in our rates. And then here's an interesting question for you. So we get picky about pulling water off the river when flows are very high, as we should. We pick really clean water off the surface. It can go right into the reservoir, doesn't need a lot of processing, so it's much more cost-effective water to pull out. Is it possible to pump when the flows are high, to be pumping off the river just during daylight? Is there a way to set up a schedule so we can most efficiently utilize the solar energy that we're getting for free essentially once it's set up. I mean, these are things that we have to kind of look at because we can get very, very strategic about how we do things, and maybe we don't need such a large power plant. And then, of course, in the wintertime, we're not going to be pumping that much water off because it's getting very dry. So there's efficiencies there. But then the sun is out, we're making energy, we're putting it back on the grid. It's a cooperative effort. So maybe we don't need so much in the way of batteries if FPL is willing to work, or whoever our partner is willing to work with, hey, instead of us storing it on site, we're putting it back on the grid. All we ask is that we get it back watt for watt when we're going to pull it off later on. And these can all be very positive agreements. It's going to take a lot of drilling to get all this information to figure it out. But I'm excited. I mean, this has worked here in DeSoto. It's getting set up in Babcock Ranch. You know, we know because Duke and FPL were up testifying before the House, there are, I think, currently over maybe a gigawatt, 1 billion megawatt, or 1,000 megawatts of power coming online over the next year. They're just slamming these panels in, and if the efficiencies are if they think that's cost effective today, and you know the efficiencies are going to get better and better, and the technology is going to improve, then this is the perfect time for us to start looking. And we may not have a project for a year, but by the time we have agreements and we're actually going out and getting those new panels, we may see that we need even less land and less panels to generate more power. So I'm very excited about the prospect. I hope the rest of the board members are.
Yeah. Commissioner. Yeah. Well, I'm all about the solar power. We have the plants in DeSoto County. They're a plus for us. They are. I mean, we're a small rural county. We don't have a whole lot of tax base, and if they don't finagle a way around to get out from under paying the taxes on, it's going to be a win-win for us.
We're working on it, sir. We're working on it.
But at the same time, I understand too. There's a pile of maintenance that goes into taking care of one of these things. It gives you the warm and fuzzies to know that I put this solar panel up. I'm getting free energy. But it's not as easy as putting it in the yard and running an electric line and plugging an extension cord into your wall at your house and your power bill goes down. It's not that simple. And I don't know this for a fact, but we're talking about FP&L went up 13% on their fees. It may be the reason they went up 13% of their fees is paying for these solar plants that they put in, that they're having to take care of all this stuff. So the technology needs to get a lot better. And I mean, I think it's something for us to continue looking at and trying to stay on the cutting edge of it, because if it can save us money in the long run, but if we put this in, is it going to cost us more to maintain it, take care of it, and keep money put back in case a panel gets broke? We haven't seen any of these solar fields go through a major hurricane yet that I know of. So I mean, there's still a lot of things out there that I want to look at before we, do anything. But, surely we need to be able to sit down and compare apples to apples. Is this going to be too much sugar for a dime, or is it actually going to be worth our while to take this land out of production from anything else, to put it into solar, to mow it, to maintain it, to keep up with it, and all, because that's not as easy as mowing your yard, mowing up and down all them. I think they've learned a lesson out yonder. I think some guys have even invented some nice new kind of lawnmowers so they can kind of almost lay down like they're in a recliner to mow all that stuff there. But it's, they talk about putting sheep there or whatever. Well, what are they going to do? They're going to stay on top of the panels. They're not. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors that has to be looked into, and I think that one day it probably will be on the cutting edge, and it is now, but I just don't know if it's feasible to fool with it now. But I would definitely want to see a lot more numbers of solar panels versus it coming in from a power station somewhere.
Commissioner Benak, you had something else.
And it's going to be important to have discussions with FPL. I mean, the Manatee County solar plant is not free solar. Manatee County had to partner with FPL. As you know, FPL is required to provide the least expensive power possible. They're required by the Public Service Commission to do that. And for a long time, they were looking for a mandate to have solar because they knew that was the only way to get around that requirement, because it was not, And I don't know yet today that it is the least expensive source of power available. So they're looking for partnerships before they do this. So I think we need to be very careful if we were going to be moving into this to be able to factor, what are some of the costs. That's why we have these bills pending in Tallahassee, quite frankly. So there's a lot to it, and I appreciate us looking into it. Certainly, it's a big ticket item, but it isn't. Everyone says it's free. It's not free. Nothing is free generally that I found, especially when it has to go through a layer of government. It just adds a little bit to the cost always. So I appreciate drilling down into what the real cost might be for a project.
Yeah, and that's something too that we actually done a referendum we had passed here. I don't know, several election or two ago here in DeSoto County allowed us to give tax abatements to businesses coming in. We actually done that with FP&L. I mean, we've waived $250,000 a year for the next several years on them, and I guess y'all done the same
We did the
thing
same
too,
thing, and now we don't want to have
help
that.
them.
We don't want to have that taken away by
No.
Tallahassee because now
We
we're
sure
really going to
don't.
get stuck.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
if I may,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner, I really appreciate the dialogue. This is not a presentation for us to say, let's go ahead and do this. This is, let's continue to dig deeper. If it's the board's will to just give consensus for staff to go ahead and, get the consultant and look at things, I mean, I just think it's good for us to see what's out there, what's the latest technologies, what is the power company willing to do, is it cost effective over the next 5 years, or let's say it doesn't get going for 2 years, but once it's in, at that point, over that next 5-year period, what will things look like? And if we're going to be paying more, then no, let's not get in it. But if something's happening with the technology and we can do 10% just to set up the link and get it started, and then when the technology really progresses, now build out more sections of the grid where it's making sense. I just think it's important for us to be looking at it. I completely appreciate the DeSoto experience and the Manatee experience because you guys are frontline. You know exactly what's going on. You're bringing information to the table that I have no exposure to, and that's great because I want to hear what's not working. Why don't we want to do this? That's a more important question than why do we want to do this. But at the same time, I think we're right at the right place to start some serious looking, and then we may get answers from staff that says it's going to be great in 3 years. Okay, well, good. Now we're on the path. We can start putting it into the budget process. We can start thinking about how's this going to work in, and we'll be partnering with FP&L now so that they may not be so quick to jack our rates up again every year because we're kind of partnering with them. So now they've got to be nice to us because we're going to expand their solar capacity, and now they're looking at our 50 acres of land going, hey, maybe we can leverage this into our system. But I think it's important that we're at least starting that discussion, that dialogue.
Yeah. Well, and it goes back to say I know the Babcock deal down there. I think the developer down there actually give the land. Had he not have given the land, the solar field wouldn't be there.
Correct.
So
no doubt.
There's got to be a partnership there with because it is so
that's
expensive.
400 acres of land.
Yeah. And that's a very expensive. When it costs that much money to go in and put those panels in, they said, hey, we can do it, but we can't afford to buy the land and do the panels.
Correct.
They said, here's the land, you build the panels.
And that would be the skin in the game,
Right.
and maybe that's the partnership that we're looking for. So.
Well, I think I think everybody's excited about this, the potential, the possibilities. I'm old enough to remember where solar panels took 6 men and a big crane to lift them on the roof of your house, and they were the ugliest things imaginable. And I went to a presentation where they've got clay roof tiles now. Almost you can't tell the difference between the regular roof tiles. So who knows what this is going to look like in 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I think we've got consensus on the part of the board, unless the members disagree with me, to just keep moving this forward with an investigation and some periodic reports back to us. But great job. So, and I do like your smiley faces and your sad faces. It breaks up a meeting. Thank you, buddy.
And
thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
And the different colors too.
Oh, it's great.
That was
They're
great
the greatest
stuff.
part of this. We've got the General Counsel's report next.
I don't have anything pending. We have obviously our BASIN report is in the file. And if
Okay.
you'd like to look at it, it's not in the board books, but it's a routine BASIN report. Nothing in particular going on that would raise your attention to.
Thank you. Mr. Lehman?
Yeah, just give you a quick update. I know you missed Mr. Coates today. We split up today that Swiftmud Southern Region was having their funding, Swiftmud was having their funding meeting today that consists of the board members from our area that will report back to the full governing board with funding recommendations for FY18. We had 4 requests in, the ongoing pipeline Sarasota, which we have commitment funding in the budget from Swiftmud. The actual agreement is pending. They have their process of 30% completion review, but that one's in the queue. The raw water ASR project is still moving forward and recommended for funding with Swiftmud. The other 2 pipelines, the Charlotte County 4D, the Sarasota one up on Lorraine Road, we'd applied for funding. Said Sarasota had the caveat that we have agreements amongst our participating members in the authority by their board meeting today. That didn't happen, but we keep them in. That doesn't mean that they're not all right for the future. That's why listening Commissioner Benak, our CIP, we just push them back in the CIP so that we can reapply in future years and keep that going. So those are ongoing. Just also looking at the state level, we've been successful in the last 3 years getting $6 million of funding. We knew this year would be odd, strange, and difficult, and it is. Representative Miller out of Sarasota sponsored our request for $1 million of continuing the regional expansion pipelines. It was co-sponsored by Representative Gruder and Representative Grant. It did not make the budget on the House side. They only allocated $20 million total on the House side for water projects to begin with. In past years, they've allocated approximately 60. On the Senate side, Senator Grimsley sponsored our request for funding. She was successful in getting a $100,000 toehold on the Senate side, so it'll go to the budget reconciliation. The important thing is we didn't expect big money this year by any means, but we certainly wanted to keep our toe in the door as we have in the past because we want to look forward to larger allocations when we actually get to the pipeline construction in the next couple of years. So anyway, we're successful on the Senate side, certainly keep the discussions going, and we'll see where we go. The other thing is the Senate Bill 10, which I was in Tallahassee and saw some of you last week, sat in their discussion of the appropriations, and that's basically Senator Negron's reservoir south of Okeechobee. But they put some interesting language into the bill itself, and during their discussions, they talked about, it's not just water storage in Lake Okeechobee. Water storage is a statewide. So they have put language into this bill, recognizing it. I'll just read it. It says here, the legislature finds that establishing infrastructure financing and providing technical assistance to local governments or water supply entities for water storage facilities is necessary to conserve and protect the waters of the state. And so they have put in here the direction to DEP to establish funding mechanism, be it loan or grants. I prefer grants, for specific water storage around the state. And when you start reading the caveat, it's almost like checking off everything we do. Regional water storage, environmentally protect, withdrawal from rivers at seasonal basis. So we certainly want to keep our eye on that and be a participant as that moves forward and how that's implemented. Thank you.
Okay.
So,
yes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So do you carry a copy of the diagram of RV Griffin with the second reservoir schematic next to it?
They prefer actual aerial photos of the reservoir themselves.
Well, it was a pleasure seeing you up in Tallahassee last week, and it is a very difficult time up there, but I'm glad we at least have a toehold on the Senate side, and you never know when we get to reconciliation. So,
Okay, routine status reports. Anything on that from anyone?
Mr. Chairman, I have one thing on item 3, which is the Regional Integrated Loop Phase 1 interconnect between 17 and Punta Gorda. Mr. Lehman and I spoke about this. The holdup may be permits with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So I brought that up at our meeting yesterday. Commissioner Truex is going to be up in Washington in 2 weeks or less, I think the 24th, 10 days. So if you can get your information to Emily Lewis at Charlotte County and give us what it is that we're really trying to do, we can work with them, because we're going to have a meeting with U.S. Army Corps and Tom Rooney, and Bill Truex will be up there, so maybe we can just bring that in as a side issue. Bill was very happy to carry that, and we may get them to move those permits forward, because there's 2 bodies of water that have to be crossed. Let's try. We'll try to help you out.
Okay. Anything else? How about any board member comments at this point?
You're doing a great job.
Thank you, thank you. And I remark about my bad math, just to spare me, you all remarking about my bad math. That's why I mentioned that. Any other commissioner comments? I do have one. I haven't spoken much today. This will be brief. I really want to keep getting updated. First of all, I give my board an update about every 3 months about what we do here as their representative. And, you know, our fellow commissioners are not going to be as intimately involved in the numbers that we do here, that we see all the time. I really want to be continually updated on what's the status of our new permit that we're going to be requesting, and the additional water withdrawals, because we're in great shape. All it takes is a prolonged drought, and we want to be there protecting everybody. So, no other board comments?
Got one.
Okay, yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Go right ahead.
I just want to thank everybody for coming and wish y'all all safe travels back home. And there's plenty of places to eat, and I'm sure that my constituents in the county would appreciate you leaving some of your out-of-towny money in their cash register. And also just want to wish each and every one of you a happy Easter. And thank you for coming. I rest.
Do we have any members of the public that would like to speak? Okay.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh is correct.
That's Miss
My
Annie.
name is Addie. How I think you're doing a good job.
Well, thank you. And
Thank you, Addie.
that's the most important thing we've heard. Wow. Yes, and so well behaved. Must have been some bribes or something involved in that. Well, with that, on that high note, we are adjourned. Cue is,